pieces of the policy, because the way that it's written right now is it will satisfy the deficiencies that are in our cyber assessment report, but that doesn't mean that it actually meets the needs of the Food Center Authority. So we're tweaking it so that it works for us. So when we get to the end of each of these weekly meetings and get to the end of having these final IT policies and procedures, then we're going to then open it up to our IT consultant so that he can then get into the technical details of the policy. The work that's going to be required for us to be in compliance as a result of this cyber assessment, it definitely cannot be absorbed by our existing staff. Now, our existing staff is definitely taking on more work because of this, but the administration of this policy could not be done by an existing employee. This new person who we would need to hire, they would be administering the program. They would be doing daily work, things such as reviewing data logs. They would be assessing our vulnerabilities daily. Just one section of 30 some policies is our document management program. They would be in charge of that entire program. They would be in charge of establishing our data classifications, our segmentations. And then this person would oversee all of these new roles that existing Food Center Authority employees have. And just some examples of these new roles. We are going to have data protection officers, business system stewards, data stewards, technical system leads, information security stewards, and all of these different roles fit together so that we got our checks and balances in place to be sure that the Food Center Authority cyber level is at the best place that we can possibly be at. The results of that cybersecurity were given in a score, and the score was between 0 and 5. They let us know that 5 is unattainable. They do not expect anyone to be a 5. You probably have to spend $1 billion to be a 5. They want all state agencies to target a 3. And where we are right now is a 0.6. And since and also I reached out to a lot of my contacts at all the other state agencies, and everybody's right around that score for the people that I know. So it's not like, I did ask, were we the worst? And they said, absolutely not. So we definitely are not the worst agency. So even just based on the things that we've already done in the last 2 months, I would have expected that score to already go up dramatically. But this new person, part of their role would be to be in charge of the next cyber assessment so that when we do get that next score, we'd be able to be shooting for that 3 target that the state would like for us to have. So what we need to do is if we're going to hire this position, included in the budget that we went through back in December 2022, this position is not there because this is brand new. So what we would need to do is for the fiscal year 23 budget, which is going to end in June, we would have to consider that for some portion of this year, we need this new position, and it was not in the budget. When we do fiscal year 24, 100% of the costs will be there. So when I meet with you in November and we go through everything, this position would already be incorporated. I would expect for this base salary on this position to be approximately $100,000. We have been kicking around different titles, but we didn't want to get too far in this process before we had board approval to do this. We were thinking something like an IT quality control officer or a security analyst. When we did our budgets in December 2022, our projected net income was $450,000 without this position included. So we are okay from a cash perspective. We're okay from a net income perspective to be able to add this position. The start date, if we were just going to be hiring this position just to do the information technology portion, I think what I would want to do is I would want to get our framework finished through the MFCA's part and then have that person start at that point. But this position is not just going to be that information technology person. They're also going to be working in my department as well. So I would like to hire them as soon as possible to start getting them trained on the things in my department so that once we do have that framework ready to go, they can jump right in and learn that part. So in order for us to hire this new employee, we would need a motion. And before we do that, if anybody has any questions about this, we can open it up now for some questions.
Let me get one of the board members to make the motion.
Yes.
To hire in this position.
Yeah.
I need a motion to hire a new IT person to manage the Maryland Food Center Authority's information technology program to enhance the Maryland Food Center Authority's cybersecurity position at an anticipated salary of $100,000. Will anyone make that motion, please?
So moved.
Do we have a second?
I'll second.
Thank you. Any discussions, questions at this point for Angela or Don regarding this role? I have a question. Is this a role going, this year I understand we're going to eat that salary. In the future, it becomes part of the budget. So therefore, it becomes part of the expenses that ultimately get back into our tenants in that expense. Is that the way it's going to work?
That's correct. It will be based on some sort of proportionate share, how much is related to admin, how much is related to produce, how much is related to the Maryland Market Center. So there would be an allocation for it.
Simple question, and forgive me if I'm asking you to repeat something. Have you identified a person for this position, or will there be some type of substantive marketing effort? Because as you know, right now, it's so difficult hiring people in this market, especially in the food industry. To kind of say, and the cost of them has just been excessive, upwards of 15 to 20% of what we normally think we should pay people.
If someone closer to the mic could repeat the question.
Is it gonna be a search, or do you have someone in mind? And 15%,
Yeah, it's
is 100K enough, is my question.
That's the question, yeah.
Yes, I do have someone in mind already. But if that doesn't work out, or that person, because we have to go through an interview process, but if that doesn't work out, then we can always go to a recruiter as a last resort.
Can you repeat the question about is 100 enough in light of?
Angela, the question is $100,000 enough in today's environment where people are getting 15 to 20% more than what is usually anticipated for a particular position? Do you think you're going to be able to get somebody for 100,000, or you're going to have to, at 115, 120,000?
I believe so. I believe 100,000 is going to get us where we need to be.
Thank you, thank you.
Any other questions? Any other comments? Concerns? Then we have a motion on the floor to hire a new IT position to manage the MFCA's information technology program, and to enhance the agency's cybersecurity protections at an anticipated base salary of $100,000. All those in favor of the motion, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
In opposition? The motion carries.
Thank you. So my next topic is related to the audit contract for anyone who's new on the board. For the last 3 years, our independent audit has been conducted under the statewide contract. And for the last 3 years, we have received our audit report extremely late. They're due on September 30th to the state. And last year we had to push our board meeting into December because we still did not have the reports by the end of November. So we have officially left the statewide contract for audit services. We went out for bid for this contract. Where we are today is that we are reviewing the references for the apparent lowest bidder at this point. And we would hope to be able to award this contract within the next 2 weeks. We did incorporate into this contract a $1,000 per day liquidated damages clause. Any amount of days past 9/30 that they would supply our financial statements will result in a $1,000 charge. This clause was discussed at the mandatory pre-bid meeting. So if they do not submit the statements by 9:30, we will charge them $1,000 per day. And this is a contract that is less than $500,000, so we don't need board approval. But I just wanted the board to know that we are actively in the process right now of getting our next independent auditors. Are there any questions?
I'm just curious, how many bids do you have?
I expected to get 3. We received 2, and then the third one showed up 20 minutes late, and then a fourth one contacted me that night that said they had an emergency, but unfortunately, if you missed, you missed. So we have 2, and each of the bids are within $500 of each other.
Any other questions? Next topic.
Okay, finally for me are the new leases that need to go to the Maryland Board of Public Works. Back in 2017, all of our tenants were offered a lease with a 3-year term with a 3-year renewal, which will end on June 30th, 2023, or a 5-year lease with a 5-year renewal, which ends on June 30th, 2027. So the leases that are ending this June 30th, we need to replace them with a new lease. The process that we took this time in generating these leases is that I've maintained a list over the last 5 years of issues that have come up, anything we needed to highlight, anything that we needed to clarify in the lease. And so we took that lease, identified where it goes into the existing lease, and then management, we had a very long meeting where we all went through both of the leases. And at the end of that meeting, legal took over and they generated the final document. At the beginning of March, we invited all of the tenants that expire this June 30th, not all of the tenants, just the tenants who expire June 30th, to a meeting. And we did a presentation showing each page of the lease to describe what they currently have, which is what they agreed to the last time, and highlighted whatever changed. So it was very, very easy for them to identify what changed in the new lease. They were then given a 3-week comment period, and you guys should have received a copy of the leases on Monday. Just to highlight the important parts of the lease that we really care about. Rent continues to be tied to CPI, so there is some sort of approximation of market built into it. And then as far as a term goes, they have the same option of a 3-year lease with a 3-year option or a 5-year lease with a 5-year option. And what's great about that is that now we're starting to have lots of different end dates of our leases. And so that's going to reduce the risk for us of, say, several tenants blowing out all at the same time. So that's a good thing for us. All of the tenants who have a lease that's expiring on June 30th are intending to sign the lease once we give it to them. Once we have approval today from this board, our next step is that we go to the Board of Public Works. They will tear that lease apart, and then hopefully we'll get approval from them. And then the next step is for us to send out these agreements to be signed by the tenants so that everything is in place on July 1st when the new lease period starts. Does anyone have any questions?
We need a motion to discussion. We need a motion to approve the tenant-approved produce in Maryland Market Center 3-year and 5-year leases, which begin July 1, 23, and to submit the leases to the Maryland Board of Public Works for approval. Anyone want to make that motion, please? Thank you. Do we have a second? We have a second. Any comments, questions, concerns, discussion?
I'll just ask, have we notified DPW that we're coming with this? Like, do they know we need to get it on the agenda?
No, we will send it. We have a whole calendar set up of what date all things are to be done based on the dates that things are required to go into BPW. And so the first step is this. I believe maybe it's Monday or Tuesday of next week that we would then submit to BPW. And we are looking, I'm going by memory here, but I think we're going for the May 4th meeting.
And we will also attend the pre-board meeting, which is when both yourself will be there and ask us details about the leaks.
Yeah, I mean, the agenda's in impact, so if there's anything I can do to like help ensure we get it on there, I'm happy.
Yeah, that would be great.
Was there any pushback on the CPI? I know they're used to CPI. We've also gone through a 20-year period from very low CPI, and now we're looking at a very aggressive, I guess, CPI coming forward.
There was no pushback, and the reason is because we have a cap at 4%.
There you go. Okay.
I'll just add on for Ben's knowledge, Ben, this will appear on the secretary's agenda.
Yeah.
Any additional discussion, questions, comments?
And I'll just add, Don usually schedules to go on the pre-board meeting voluntarily.
Yeah.
A lot of times you're called to the pre-board meeting
But we always just.
mandatory
Yeah, yeah.
because there's an issue.
Yeah, I'd rather volunteer and be there and go,
Yes.
I'd rather have all the questions asked at a pre-board rather than at the board meeting itself, so.
When I submit the documents, that is part of the process, is to request time for the pre-bid meeting.
And just to clarify, I think it'll be the May 3rd meeting. That's when.
Okay, thank you.
Great to know, thank you. Yes, we can vote. All those in favor of the two new leases with the options as presented, all in favor?
Aye.
The opposition? Motion carries. The next step is on to the Board of Public Works.
Thank you, everyone. I'm
Thank
going
you.
to turn it over to Gary now.
Good morning, everyone. I'm gonna walk over to the picture for some of the people that aren't familiar with the building. I can.
Gary, you can stay for a quick second to wait to Ben, anybody else, your role, so they know who you are and what your role.
Gary Zecker, I'm the director of market operations for the MFCA. So the first update is we're putting a 2,800 square foot building, or we're proposing to put a 28 square foot freezer cooler box. That's in the schematic phase right now. The architect has sent out the final drawing where we had to make the roof a little taller because we were trying to keep under the gutters, but it didn't work out that way. So we had to make it 4 foot taller to accommodate all the refrigeration lines for repair in the future. Once we get that, we gotta get all the approval from all the parties. We're actually waiting on CCAP right now.
Where is this again?
This is all the way down at the end of the, all the way down at the end of Oceana.
Okay,
You'll dump right into it if you go around.
okay, gotcha.
And we own this parcel and CCAP has been renting the blue, what looks like a blue top building since the 90s. And I think it's like 95 in the old facility, and now they need to add a refrigerated extension onto the building. And then their rent will be calculated to pay off that additional expansion of the building. So, and then that big parking area is, we rented to a company that bought out Bob's Transport. They used to rent that space, and it's a company that operates over in the old Giant facility. So they're continuing to rent the facility and store their extra trailer.
Where this red truck, this is Oceana.
No, that's Tarbay.
There's Oceana, okay, now, okay.
Tom, what do you use as a return on our investment for, I know they're gonna pay additional rent to pay it off, but what is ours? Okay, as far as ours.
We're going to determine that once we are able to go out for bid and we have our cost estimates. It's going to have to be based on whatever is happening in the real world at that time, because when we go down and have to, because this is the one, we're going to have to get approval for this new lease because it's going to incorporate these costs. So whatever our return is going to have to be based on whatever is happening at that time. When we did the presentation for the budget, I used 7%. 7% today would not be right. It's too high, but we would have to look at that moment, what can we defend at the pre-board meeting? Because they will make us defend it.
Okay, the last update I'll have for you is the Maryland Market Center. We just completed putting a new roof on the Secret Market, formerly known as the Secret Market. This is the Maryland Market Center. You have to envision that the new NAFCO building is directly behind this building, and they intersect. The only issue we're having right now is where they intersect. There's a specific requirement for the buildings to be joined with an expansion joint, and right now, it's in NAFCO's hands, their manufacturer, to approve what our manufacturer already has for our contract. And then it'll be completely done.
Oh, there's a gap between the two buildings.
There is no chance of leak. The gap's there, but everything is sealed. it's temporary until the final, whatever they're gonna do, the final tie-in. Any other questions?
Any questions?
Well, what it does is, if you got rain that's going down in between the two buildings, the building that NAPCO built is a freezer building. So any rain that would end up being down at the base of the building would be subject to freezing and causing damage to the building. So this is to prevent any rain water from going into in between the two buildings. And the process of attaching the two buildings can be complicated because both buildings will expand and contract at different rates. So they got to have a material that can handle that particular issue. And so we're working with NAPCO's people and our roofer to make sure that what is done is going to work. So it's been a headache for Gary, but he's handled it very well.
Other than that, I mean, our roof is complete. No more leaks.
That's exciting, that's exciting.
Yeah. Yeah, the roofer was extremely good to work with. And
One of the best contractors.
yeah, one of the best we've ever had. So
Any other questions for Gary about the markets?
You can see it right up.
Yeah, you can see right up in the.
Thank you.
When you have time.
On your own.
okay, so the produce market expanded. When we got into, now we're into the real minute details of what the impact of extending the back dock is currently 12 feet and making it 25 feet deep. The impact that's going to have on trucks and vehicles coming in and out of the marketplace. And the impact that it's going to have on what used to be extra storage space for trailers. And so we recently met with the 3 tenants who are going to be affected in the beginning of this phase, because the first section that we would do would be a section that includes Kuzman's, Petronas, and
OFD.
OFD, yeah.
OFD.
OFD, yeah. And so we asked them to come to a meeting. We were showing them what was going on, and we talked to them about it's like how many doors do they need per unit, and talking about some of the challenges that would arise if they're going to have 2 doors versus 1 door, and we just kind of brainstormed with them about what they thought was a reasonable way to go at it. We'll also have a meeting with all the tenants and get some input at some point. We're trying to get to where we can narrow that discussion. We're trying to get it to where what we have laid out is going to work, and then present it to the tenants, and then from that point take any input that they have on what we're doing. But the first 3 tenants, we wanted to get them involved in the beginning because it was easier to deal with 3 tenants than all the tenants on the market. They say that if you had a committee and you wanted to design a horse, what you would end up with is a camel. So we don't want, we want to try and keep the committees functional so that it doesn't get out of control and people are going off on different tangents. But anyway, it's going along pretty good. We're getting down into the phase where we'll be able to prepare the documents necessary to bid the project out. The engineers think that they can get us a estimate of what the project's going to cost. Certainly going to cost more than the 10 million that we have allocated from the state and the 2 million that we have allocated from the county. It's going to be significantly more, I think. And we have to prepare for, like, we have to upgrade the electric so that they can refrigerate this space, but then also we have to think about them potentially wanting to refrigerate their entire unit in order to accommodate certain customers who are going to be looking at this cold chain supply initiative. So that's on schedule. And then we have to have a survey done on the parcels that we have behind the market center. So NAPCO now occupies 3 parcels, one of which they bought with merit, which is E1. And then E2 was going to be Lobster 1, which was the first refrigerated warehouse that they built. And then E3 was going to be Lobster 2, which is the building that's behind the market center. And we're now looking at maybe just combining those two together and making them one big parcel, because the parking arrangements, parking that they need to have to qualify for the county, since it's the same user, they can be flexible. So the number of parking that they'll have on those two sites will be enough to accommodate it from the county's perspective. But because the same company is operating both, they can deal with how they want to park their vehicle. And so it's been a challenge, and of course, one of the biggest challenges to this particular E2 subdivision is that there's a 0 lot line that goes between their building and our market building. So they're going to have to get a variance from the county, and they decided that they wanted to wait until after they built, a 50 million plus building on the property, and then go in and ask for the variance, because it's a better argument at that point than if it's just vacant land. So that's on them. They have an option to buy the property at the end of their lease period, and they won't be able to buy it if they can't get the 0 lot line approved. So they know that this is very important to them. So that's where we are on the subdivision in the back. Because right now the county looks at that parcel in the back as one big parcel, and then we own it. And what we really want to do is divide the parcels and then have the taxes on the two buildings separate, apart from our tax. And that's what we're trying to get done. Any questions on that?
Right now, though, is the Lobster 1 freezer and the new freezer, the ones that are under the ground lease, they're on one parcel, is that correct?
Well, they're not yet. That's what we're trying to do. We were going to
So there is
subdivide
3 parcels.
There used to, well, there's 3 in theory. I mean, we've got the design that way, but it makes sense to not have an E2 and an E3. It's better that we just combine it all into E2, since they control both of those sites. And then the parking issue kind of goes away.
But
Okay.
the one is carved out, right? The one they
Yes, the
Purchase
E1 is already,
assembled.
it's carved out.
Yeah, it's separate owned, that's on the merit.
Yeah,
Well, so
that's right.
they have to
That
have
was a
conflict
lease.
there.
Yeah.
They have
the other
conflict
2 were
there.
ground leases.
Yeah, and we just want to make sure that the ground leases and the taxing for each facility are they're billed to them and not to us. So that's where we stand on that. The next issue that we need to do is, unfortunately, the way you all's appointments happen is through the governor's appointment officer, and it's a kind of a green bag approach. And if a governor doesn't replace all the people that are due at the time that they're governor, which has happened through a couple of governors now, what happens is you build up where we have a lot of members holding over, and then the new governor coming in is now going to take all the people that are holding over and replace them with new people. So one of the persons that's going to be replaced is Steve. And so he's the chairman. And so I'll let Steve
Yeah,
take it.
I have not been reappointed, so I'll be leaving, I guess, the end of June. I think is when my appointment's over. It's been fun, it's been nice. So I thank you all for the opportunity to serve. Which means that we need to appoint a new chairman. I will make a recommendation that my current vice chair, Gail, assumes the role of chairman, if she's willing to accept it. So I would like to place her name in nomination to replace me as the new chair of the Maryland Food Center. I would need a second to that motion, and any other nominations, if anybody else would like to nominate someone else, that's totally acceptable. If I can get a second to my knowledge. Is there any other name that we wish to place in nomination? Anybody want to serve? If you nominate yourself, I don't have a problem with that.
Please feel free to nominate.
So I guess the next question is, Gail, will you serve if elected?
I will not be LBJ. I will say.
Okay.
Yes.
So,
I will
and
miss you desperately, though. I
you-
so enjoyed his background in the food grocery industry. In this brief time that we've overlapped, I've just learned so much. And we know how to find you, right? We know where you live.
I'm here, summers, winter, I try to be in Florida.
Grandchildren together, but with separate
I just
children.
had 2 grandchildren this week.
This-
Two of my sons, wives and babies, one in Philadelphia and one in Washington.
Oh.
My wife and I are now new, proud grandparents, 5. Anyway, that said, I think we need to vote on Gail's nomination as new chair of the Maryland Center Authority. Good luck working with them. All those in favor?
Aye.
Any oppositions? No, thank you. Thank you, Gail. Congratulations. It's all yours. Currently, any vacancy now, we need a new vice chair of the board. And is there anyone that would like to serve? Anyone want to nominate anyone else to serve? Gail can use a vice chair. She's been a great resource to me in helping me with things. So we have a.
Are you interested? Yes.
Speak to my lady that needs rolling.
Donald, maybe we can talk about it in advance, so.
I'd rather someone else do it.
Any other?
You want April?
No.
Is that what it goes?
Well, why don't we have a chairman. Why don't we
Yeah.
take in the next couple of months, Gail, you to figure out.
I'm out of the country for the June meeting, then, so, oh, by the way.
Okay. Oh,
No, then that needs to be.
It'd be helpful to know what the vice chair does.
Yes, I mean, if any of you are interested in the position of vice chair, I'm happy to go through the detail. Typically, I would try to meet with you before the board meeting. And I always manage to meet with the chair and we go through the agenda. And just so that the chair knows what to do, what motions to ask for and that sort of thing. And every once in a while, if there's a political issue that I need to talk to the vice chair and chair about, it'll be that. And there's not a whole lot of, I hope there's not a whole lot of work outside the board meeting. So it's not, I'm not gonna be pulling you in and tying you up in meetings and all that kind of stuff. So, but it is a very important position. And as you can see, as long as Gail continues to be the chair, the vice chair will be the vice chair. But if Gail leaves for any reason, we'll make sure she doesn't, because there's a special handcuff. And we put on the chair and go from there. But if you're interested and you want to talk more about it, I'm happy to talk to you.
you also have us serve on the real estate committee.
Yes.
So that's
Yeah. The person would be a member of the real estate committee. And when we're discussing that might be a meeting where we would ask you to attend with the tenants or something of that nature, if there is any concerns or whatever with respect to our real estate.
And the only other thing in this whole transition of more transparency, and I don't know if it was because I was retired and had too much time on my hands, or if I was vice chair, but I did some training parallel with Peggy on transparency meeting, blah, 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 blah. It was really very, very good. I've used it with other nonprofits.
It's pretty easy. It's a pretty easy little process.
It's a very, but
that to whoever.
that's like every 2 years we have to renew that I don't know. It was in this transition for more meeting transparency.
So I just have both the chair and the vice chair doing those meeting close meetings, somebody had to have taken the training to participate in those.
It's online. I'm also,
Not very much online.
I've also been
I did long.
serving as the approved and authorized professional, I guess, in closed meetings. I went through that training as well. So there might be something you need to do. Yeah, it's not online. It's an online.
Yes.
Oh,
Just kidding.
I'm still going to England in June, sorry, folks.
With that said, should I chair the next meeting? The June, I leave, my last day is June 30th, so should I, if she's not here, if I chair, and I chair the last meeting, if there's no vice chair in place.
Yeah, we can make her chairmanship.
Beginning of
We
July.
can, yeah, when you
Okay,
Excellent.
I don't have a problem.
Yeah.
And meanwhile, we will
Yeah,
try to.
we could vote. We could vote on the vice chair.
Okay. Thank you all. The next order of business
There's
is,
a motion, I'll say that we
Yeah, that's start, yeah, her chairmanship would start
July
when,
1.
yeah,
July 1.
everybody good with that?
We have I need a motion to approve the R&D in your book. For the Maryland Market Center and the produce market. I can give a little bit of brief discussion about why it's presented this way. And we will need approval.
Yeah. So for the benefit of Ben and everybody else, it's always called the revenue and expenses, and new people will tend to look at it as you would look at a business where you're hoping that the expenses don't exceed your revenue. The revenue in this case is revenue that we collect from the tenants at the gate. There's an entrance fee as well as additional services that we provide the tenants. For example, we haul out all of the trash in the market. We perform some light maintenance and provide some maintenance folks to fix a toilet or whatever, and any other expense that is specifically for a tenant, they get charged for that. And then all of the expenses are paid in part by the monies that we collect. If we collect more money than the expenses on the sheet, then that money is credited back to the tenant. If we collect less, then we go ahead and bill them for the difference between what the expenses are compared to the revenue. But the revenue was never set up to cover all of these expenses. The revenue, we're just showing you how we work with the tenants, and that all the money we collect at the gate and from other like registration, miscellaneous pallet sales, that sort of thing. And then that revenue goes against the expenses. So in this case, you can see that the expenses so far are considerably more than what we've collected at the gate in revenue. And then the tenant, that will be prorated over the tenant's units. So that's how it's done. So does anybody have any question? And we go through this with the tenants. We have tenant meetings, and Angela and Gary will go through and answer any questions relative to any of the expenses that are here. It's completely transparent. They want to come up and review our books, they can do that. During the time when we're putting our annual budgets together, we invite tenants to come up and look at what we're proposing for the year. And then they can offer any suggestions or comments to Angela at that time. Okay. And then presented to you, not necessarily to approve, but to be aware of. And so we ask you, second, as presented, because there's not a whole lot we can do to modify this here. So, yeah,
As a good example, can and maybe Gary discuss how is the lack of snow
Yeah,
and the removal and all that impact this? Because I guess for a year end in June, we know that we're pretty much done with snow.
We're pretty much done with snow, but there was still some equipment that had to be either updated or some things changed on it to keep it up to standards, for plowing. Other than that, we're way below, for snow because we didn't get any. I think
So
we got
that
one.
benefit the tenants.
A little bit of 10 cents.
but that would be seen in the next
yes.
dated thing, right?
Well,
The next half.
yeah, we usually do a summary at the end of the year, so we don't, and sometimes Angela will change what their monthly charge is for the expenses, depending on whether she can forecast that that expense no longer exists or whatever, but we we generally are in a position where we're gonna build them anyway, so to change that, in other words, we take what the expenses here are and we divide that up, and Angela comes up with a per month charge. And the tenants pay the charge monthly. So that at the end of the year, they're gonna pay all of it at once. We used to have a lease that did that, and it was horrible because at the end of the year, they would get this massive bill. And so we decided that we were gonna break it down, and then we would have tenants leave the market. And a new tenant would come in and we're like, well, what do we charge that new tenant? And that tenant now only has to pay that month of whatever it is that's being charged. Does that make sense?
And Angela reconciles it once
Yeah.
it is wet.
Yeah.
Gail, do you see on the produce market that has a negative number of $77,000 in the second column? Flip to the next page for the Maryland Market Center, and you'll see that it has a positive number in the second column. What that indicates is that if the year were to end as of January 1st, which it doesn't, it ends June 30th, but if it was going to end on January 31st, we would bill the produce market tenants $77,000 based on their proportionate share of units they occupy. If you're at the Maryland Market Center, we're giving you a refund because we have over collected.
Thank you. Do we have a motion? I'm sorry.
Just a question, why are the fuel and utilities up so much? Versus 2020, you know?
I couldn't hear the question. Could you repeat?
Fuel and utilities, the
For
question
the
was
produce
quite
market,
so much.
1,000 versus 2,000.
I'm sorry. Can one person say what the question was?
Why is the fuel so higher?
Oh, because the amount for electricity, the amount for natural gas, just these raw resources have gone up in expense like 35%. So even during the budget process, we were told to increase the budgeted amounts for these types of services because the cost is so much higher.
And Angela, also, why are contractual services so much?
Contractual services is made up of about 20 different items. One thing that I know that we have spent more money on this year is more IT related issues. So that would be higher. Which market are you looking at?
Produce.
You're looking just at produce? Okay, give me one moment, please. Okay.
The other one too, right? Is that right?
Yeah, yes.
What's up?
I didn't bring the right glass.
Come on, Joe.
I'll buy you glasses on the way home at the drugstore. That's. CBS has pretty low.
So all right, it's a
Color.
Angela.
Angela, we're waiting on you.
Yes.
Yes, I'm pulling it up right this second.
Oh,
I can tell you.
I started to say, she's quiet, she's thinking.
Okay, so currently this year, our landfill costs has gone up over the prior year. The cost to take a ton of trash is now about $140 per ton. When I started here, it was like $55 a ton. Let's see, where else have we gone up? We're all temporary labor. That's it. That's exactly why. So we are using a temporary labor service this year, and we were not doing that last year because we were fully staffed last year. That is the cause.
Thank you.
Do we have a motion to accept and approve, I guess, these two reports?
Just accept.
Just accept. Do I have a motion? Do I have a second?
Second.
Second, all those in favor of approving, say aye. Any oppositions? Seeing none, the motion passed. Now, while we're on this, seem to have an abundance of time. I'm not gonna talk about the bio. Are we eating that anything yet? That was a whole lot of conversation we had in the past about how much we were gonna be able to feed into that from our organic waste. Is it something we're taking advantage of or not yet?
Yes, we are taking advantage of it. We do take loads there. They have been trying to work through some of the challenges of taking some of our waste. For example, if a tenant gets a load in that they want to dispose of because the load is below grade that they paid for, or for whatever reason, that product may be all boxed up. And it takes a lot of labor to unbox all of the product and then separate the produce from the boxes. And they are having a hard time with getting the boxes into their system. So they're looking at adding on another device that will mulch the boxes and the produce inside of them prior to going into. So and since that has been an issue, we can't always take product to them. We have Kuzmin's who has what we call very, very clean material. And then that's one price. So everything that they put into a truck is totally acceptable, and they get charged the lowest amount. If we have a tenant who has a load that they want to dispose of, but it's a mixed load, it has product, but that also has other non-organic product, then there's a different fee for disposing of that. And we finally worked with them, and they're going to take Gary's word. He's going to look at trying to.
That hasn't been approved yet, but that's what they're looking into.
Yeah, they're looking into taking our word when we take a full load to them. What percentage of the load is completely clean? And what percentage of the load has some other product in it? And making sure that the tenant who has all the clean product gets the benefit of the lower rate. And so they might come up with a melded rate together or something of that nature. But they're concerned about the fact that we haven't been taking as much as we asked them to allocate in their space for us. And they are very active. They're just about at capacity. And if we can't meet a certain amount, then we have to adjust our allocation. And I don't know what happens if we go over our allocation or what, but they want us to commit to a certain quantity of waste. And I tell them, I said, it's very difficult because if we commit to a certain quantity of waste, that means that nobody's making any effort to reduce their waste. And I don't want, I don't want to appear like we're just saying, okay, we'll take 7,000 tons to you and we're not going to make any effort otherwise. But we do have on the market, we have the hog lady, right? Yeah, I mean,
Yes.
that's what we refer to her as. She's a nice lady, but she gathers that she'll take product from the tenants for free to feed her hogs. And so a number of the tenants have been donating to her because there's no fee at all. But we worked with farmers in the past on this, and it usually works pretty well for, maybe a year or so, and then all of a sudden they stop coming to the market. And so the problem with that is if there's a certain amount going to her and all of a sudden it's not there and we don't have the allocation in the plant, then we got a problem. And so we're trying to work with them because they really want us to be involved in the operation because they can use us as an example, and they want to promote that the food center is donating product to their operation and that sort of thing. So they're just in the early stages of trying to figure out how to deal with all the different waste that they're taking.
Don, I just was curious, do you know what impact the new law for food waste in the state is gonna, how that will affect the operations of the.
Yeah, the new leases, we're actually telling that we're gonna take the waste to this operation here. But there is a law that says if you have organic waste, and there's a recycler within 25 miles of your location, you must take your organic waste to that facility. And so we're trying to work with the tenants. We're trying to think of, maybe having two different types of bins that they use to put the products in. So one bin would be non-produce, the other bin would be produce, and then have our guys being able to load it into the truck. It is putting stress on us with respect to our assets. I mean, we have to now have 2 trash trucks operating. We're having problems with getting people who are qualified to drive these vehicles and everything else. And that's been, there are times when Gary has to go down and actually drive a truck. Not something that I would expect the director of operations to be doing, but he will do it if it's necessary. But it's hard when, the tenants, I mean, obviously, if I'm a tenant and I can give my waste material away for free, as opposed to paying for it, then I'm gonna do that. But it does screw up our ability to commit to a certain allocation that they're making.
Well, Angela made a comment, we're off topic here, but Angela made a comment that when she started, we were at $50.
Yeah.
And now we're 141. Well, obviously, these numbers flow back to the tenants in some sort of charge.
Yeah.
So there should be a way of using that to our advantage to comply with the new state law, because it is money saving to them, provided they do it in the proper fashion.
Yeah. Yeah.
So there is a fiscal
Yeah.
windfall for them potentially.
We've attempted to use that to try to, convince them to do it. And most of them say, we don't have time to store it. The other ones, because there's just so, like, you have one tenant that has one unit. He doesn't really have to be a part of the program unless we do the whole market as one. Now your larger tenants, most of our larger tenants are either found another avenue, or they're using our program.
Yeah.
So is the hog lady out of business with this new law?
No, she actually.
No, we actually,
She's okay?
Yeah.
we actually talked to our the people we have to answer to the state about recycling to get approval for her as long as we get waste from her.
Okay.
But like I said, like Don said, the downside is once we tell BTS what we're bringing, and then she decides she doesn't want to have hogs anymore,
Right.
we have a real problem.
Yeah.
Yeah.
When they came to this property, did they come with some expectation that they had expressed about how much they thought they would get from?
Yeah, they went around to all the people that were committing to use their operation and asked us what our yearly disposable tonnage was. But ours is driven by cycles. And so we had to let them know that it's not going to be the same every month. It's going to be different. And
Did we just?
Time is up. Is there time up?
Start us up again.
but in any case, it's they're more successful, I think, than they thought they were going to be, because they've gotten they're getting to a point where they're reaching their full capacity, and that's what they want. And if we're sitting there holding on to a certain level of capacity, that capacity doesn't get processed by them, and that's a loss of income for them.
And with this 25-mile, said law,
Yeah.
did some people come to them
Yes.
that are
Yeah.
in that?
For example, the manure waste at the mall where they have the show, the medieval show. They have
Oh, that show.
and they have all those horses and everything.
Right, Renaissance.
They generate, a significant amount of manure, and they take that because that's a really good product for them. They'll take vegetable oil, so restaurants will bring oil to them, and it really comes down to the commitment that business has in recycling. And I don't want to be overly negative, but when you go to Europe, it's a matter of just, that's how they do it. They have multiple cans. If you're gonna go up to a receptacle for trash, there's probably 4 different containers that you have to choose from. Americans have not been terribly concerned about it, and we're not the best recyclers, you know, in the world. And when there's a cost to recycle, they look at that first. I mean, if they get a bad load in, it's easier for them just to put it on the back dock like they always do and just have Gary take it away. If they now have to allocate labor to break it all down and everything, that becomes a cost that they add on to it as well. And it's a matter of when they're doing that, are they not making money doing something else so that then it becomes a double thing. So then there's a cost, and then there's, you know, an opportunity of income with them working, doing their regular job. And so we're just working through it. It's just it's going to be a trial and error process for the next year. Man, we've had the same thing with odor control. Every once in a while, they're trying to install equipment, they need to leave the doors open, and it can be quite
The difference.
really kind of different, yeah. And then Gary has to deal with the tenants complaining about the odor coming across, and then we talk to them, and they're aware that they're creating this odor, and they're gonna do everything they can to control it. But for the most part, when they got their doors down, the facility does retain a lot of the odor that part of their operation. So I just feel sorry for the people that have to work on the inside of that building. But they're doing the best that they can, and they're willing to look at different ways to be able to help us process the waste that we have. And I think our market is a unique customer of theirs, because we have different people doing different things, and trash can come from the market in different ways, and it all has organic material in it, but it will have other material that's not acceptable. And then they've actually gone through, and when they first opened up, said, we'll take everything, you know, and we'll process it. And then they find out that their auger system and everything is clogged up, and it's like, okay, we can't take boxes of produce anymore. We have to get something to grind that up. So that's what they're looking to do now.
And it's been open how long? We
So
toured it.
about a year. Yeah.
Okay, we toured it, was that just last year? that we
Yeah.
Bumped around with our boots.
I'm ready to, anything else, we're ready to, one question, next meeting is when Gail wants to move it to after she gets back. That's fine,
That is not a Tuesday.
if she wants to,
You're gonna,
when is it scheduled?
you actually are still on the board then, June 22nd.
Yeah.
First or 22nd? Yeah. I see June
My
20
NDA
first,
year, Mark.
June 22nd.
22nd?
Oh,
Okay,
those dates that are on that last one, those.
okay, so
Those
June,
have been corrected, I still haven't used up the meeting.
okay, so June 22nd.
Yeah.
Any other business that we wish to discuss and questions, and we can, Don, you have anything else?
No, I think that's.
Okay, I need a motion to adjourn, fast meeting, guys, thank you all. Do I have a motion to adjourn? Do I have a second? Any opposed? We are adjourned.
Thank you all very much. Appreciate you all.